Hey, Jack Roberts again with CCJ and Overdrive Magazine, and we're in the back of Henry's luxurious Cascadia Evolution tractor. Look how opulent this is. Actually, I'm kidding. We're at a Freightliner event here at the mansion at Turtle Creek. It's the end of our drive. We've wrapped it up. We logged 11 miles per gallon, and I'm going to just turn it over to Henry here and get his final thoughts on where he thinks that number is, what he thinks could he have done a little better, could he have done a little worse? What do you think on 11 MPG for this drive?
11 was real good. At the beginning we had wet roads, and wet roads increase your rolling resistance, so we might have picked up a tenth or two, but 11, I'll take that every day.
Sure.
With fuel surcharge being based on 6 miles a gallon, 11's just profit in your pocket. And as we talked about before, that can be your kid's education, your retirement, new car every couple of years, like we talked about, even a new Escalade.
We talked a little bit, we had people saying, well, you're trying to cram this down our throats. This is really the next frontier. Where do you think, if you say 6 miles per gallon is sort of the accepted number in the industry today, it's not going to be that way much longer. Where do you think the new frontier is, and what do you think drivers can do about that?
Well, in the past, if you were able to average 7 miles a gallon, just normal trailers, everything, that was considered to be like you were really doing something spectacular. When you came out with the SCR technology and some other things that freed up the engines to run, and combined with the aerodynamics they're employing on the truck like the Evolution is today, 8 became a pretty doable situation. You take it one step farther forward, now with the Evolution out in 2014 greenhouse gas DD15, 9's definitely a possible number. To get to 10, yeah, you've got to really have all your I's dotted and your T's crossed to do it. But it can be done. As you saw, most of the time I just left the truck run on its own on cruise control. There wasn't much driver input. In the past, I could influence the fuel mileage a good half mile an hour by driver technique. Still, I can eke it up a little bit, but it's almost got where it's not worth it to go through that effort, because you'll end up with a sore ankle by the end of the day. So I see it as a very possible number to hit 10. Is that everybody going to hit 10? No, you really got to have everything right to do 10.
Let me ask you one final question before we shut this trip down. There's a lot of guys who are watching this video, they run for fleets, they're company drivers, they've got fuel economy bonuses out there. Any tips for a guy who's running a truck, maybe not as specialized as yours or tricked out? What can he do to boost his numbers? Any advice for that guy who'd like to win that Harley, that F-150, that cash money?
The first thing to do, and I'll go back and I'll tell a story about a guy I met. He was hauling containers. And when I met him at a travel center, I was getting my oil changed, and the one guy, he was struggling. And they tire wear issues, fuel mileage issues, and everything. And they asked me to talk to him for a few minutes, because they knew what all I did. I went and he looked at, he had the wrong tires on the truck for fuel mileage to start with. Talked to him about that. It wasn't that the tires were doing anything wrong, they were just in the wrong application. And his fuel mileage was suffering. So I said to him, what I want you to do, and I had a short period of time because I had to leave, I actually had a load to deliver. I said, start tracking your fuel mileage every time.
Yeah.
And that's I left him with that. Well, about a month later, I'm fueling up and I hear from the other side of the fuel aisle, hey, that worked. And I'm like, well, who am I talking to and what worked? So I look over and he starts talking to me. I remembered the conversation at that point. And he says, how did you know that I would pick up that much fuel mileage by starting to track my fuel mileage each time? I said, because you just made a game out of it. I said, every time you write it down and you find out what happened on that run that I got poor fuel mileage. What happened when I did something right? You try to emulate that to happen more often.
Right.
It really made a game out of it for him, and at the end of the day, he had picked up over a mile to the gallon. And he was, when I talked to him, he was 5.5. He was up to 6.5 and approaching 7 with what he was doing pulling containers, which aren't aerodynamic by any means.
So what I think I hear you telling me is that for a company guy who maybe he can control the tires, maybe he can't on the truck, he's got to start working at it. You got to make it a daily thing.
It's every little thing. I mean, where do you take your brakes? Do you take it down in a